Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be one of those videos where I reflect upon the language learning failures of some of the people that I have encountered along my own language learning journey, if you like. I do this, of course, not to rub salt into the wounds of anybody who has failed to learn the language that they were trying to learn, but simply to try and draw some lessons, to make some general observations about this process that so many of us seem to attach importance to. This story is drawn from my first year at university, back when I was learning Japanese many moons ago. I was only 19 then. There was a mature student, which is a polite term in Britain for anyone who hasn't basically gone into university straight out of school. There was a mature student on our Japanese course. I'm not going to mention his name. He was probably 43. I've got a feeling he was in his 40s. That seems about right. Damn, I'm older now than he was then. That seems a bit frightening, but that's what happens in life. Gradually you get older and older, I've come to realize. And he was about 43. Now, if you compare a 43-year-old to the 19, 20-year-olds who made up most of the people on the course, you can see that that's quite a big difference. Socially, it's going to be strange and disconcerting for most people to come back into that sort of environment at a much more advanced age. This chap had been studying Japanese at night school for a while, who knows, months, maybe a couple of years, who knows, I don't know. But he had decided to go to university. I don't know if he already had a degree, maybe he already had a degree in something else, but he had decided to enroll at our university, the University of Sheffield, to do Japanese studies. And he had a slight advantage. He'd already done a bit of Japanese. Like I've said in other videos, I knew about 2 sentences in Japanese when I started. I knew nothing, to all intents and purposes. He had a bit of an advantage, but the amount of Japanese that you pick up studying it a bit at night school is actually going to be relatively trivial. Once you get stuck into relatively hardcore language studies, you're going to realize that if you're in that position, having studied Japanese at night school, you're quickly going to realize that you knew virtually nothing. And that is what happened with this chap, who was very nice, very friendly, a bit naive, seemed all at sea, to be honest, much of the time. What I remember most when I think about him was his inability to retain any sort of information about Japanese pronunciation for more than about a tenth of a second. If you study Japanese, you'll know that the O type vowel in Japanese is more like the English O, and not at all like the English diphthong O. So you get ma, mi, mu, me, mo, ta, chi, tsu, te, to. These syllable lists that you go through when you learn Japanese, it's mo, to. And there are some very important grammatical particles that are pronounced with that vowel, mo, to, o. He said mo, to. I still remember, man. So if you take a basic Japanese sentence like, I'm going to go to, watashi mo ikimasu, watashi mo ikimasu, or however you want to pronounce it, he'd say mo every time, as in to mow the lawn. And our teacher in those first year grammar classes, who was a British guy, he would jump in. He had to do this to do his job. He'd say, yeah, it's not mo, it's something like mo, watashi mo, that mo. And this guy would say to himself, oh yes, I remember. He'd say that to himself every time. Oh yes, I remember. And then he'd do exactly the same thing. Next time, watashi mo, watashi to issho ni, all this stuff. I'd never encountered anything like it. That plain inability to retain any sort of information for more than a second. 10 minutes later, you could ask him to say something in Japanese, you'd make exactly the same mistake again. It reached the point where when he had to say something, you could see our teacher didn't know whether to correct him or not, because he'd already corrected him 15 times and none of it ever made any difference, and It started to get embarrassing for the teacher and for us to some extent. I mean, what is the matter with this guy? Why can't I don't know? This sounds unkind, but you have to remember that at university you're not just in a learning environment, you're also in a social environment. There are people there who observe each other and interact with each other, right? In and out of the classroom. And it's a social environment, and things can get socially embarrassing and awkward. For various different reasons, put it like that. Anyway, this guy was obviously not doing particularly well. He was not only struggling with his pronunciation, he was struggling more generally. You can tell quite quickly who's going to have a good chance with something like Japanese and who is not. And despite the fact that I was new in that sort of university environment, because it was my first time at university, I think it was obvious to me and probably obvious to other people as well that he was going to struggle. I would say, we had our Christmas holidays, came back in January, and he was gone. And I don't think anyone ever heard. As far as I'm aware, he wasn't in contact with anyone on the course. He just hadn't come back. Undoubtedly, he would have got in contact with the department to tell the department that he would not be returning. I imagine he would have done that, but none of us heard from him as far as I'm aware. That was it, gone. So you're talking about 1 term, 3 months, something like that, of study, and poof, gone. There's nothing wrong with dropping out of degree at university. There's nothing wrong with dropping out of anything in life. If you decide it's not for you, if you decide that it's not worth it, if you decide that you're wasting time and money and energy and that you should be doing other things in life, then drop it, whatever it is. It's just a bit sad. And I've said this in other videos, I'm sure, but it's sad when you can see that people have to abandon not only their studies, that's not the most important part, but when people have to abandon a notion of who they believed they would be in the future. I will be a person who's good at Japanese. I will be a person who can speak it. We build these castles in the sky sometimes as the type of person that we will be in the future. And sometimes those castles, to the extent that they existed at all, come tumbling down, and we realize that we were, to a greater or lesser extent, deluded. And not because something completely beyond our control happened, but because we just weren't good enough at something. We thought we were better than we were, more talented than we were. We thought we had more aptitude than we actually had. And we got into an environment where we were practicing or studying this thing that we were into, and we realized that we couldn't hack it, that other people were better than us, more talented, more capable, and so we just had to drop it. And I still think about him sometimes, and the way he just had to jack it in. Because, he would have told his friends, his family back home, oh yeah, I'm going to university, I'm going to study Japanese, and a few years from now I'll graduate. Oh, maybe I'll go and live in Japan and work there, get a job using my Japanese. And people build this stuff up, and when it disintegrates, then there's the potential for a certain amount of, lack of confidence, destruction of confidence, damage done to your own sense of identity. There's the possibility of being embarrassed or humiliated in front of other people you know. Not because they're cruel to you about it, just because you feel embarrassed, you feel humiliated. It's quite exposing. Language learning is very exposing, really. The gap between people who are good and people who are not good, the gap between people who have talent and people who do not, is very stark, and it pertains to something in our skulls. If I can't learn to kick free kicks like David Beckham can, or could back in the day, does he still play? Probably still kicks better free kicks than I do. If I can't learn to do that, I don't care that much. Some people would care, but I don't care, because that's a biomechanical skill, it's an athletic skill. And to me, that kind of thing was never particularly important. Like I said, to other people it would be. But to me, no. I was more interested in intellectual pursuits, cognitive pursuits, academic pursuits. Call them whatever you like. But yeah, if I put myself into an environment in which I just couldn't hack it in terms of intelligence and talent and academic aptitude, then that my self-confidence, my ego, my sense of who I was would take a hit. And I just wonder how that was for him. Hey, maybe he shrugged it off. Maybe it wasn't that big a deal in the end. But yeah, the failures can be a bit difficult to observe sometimes. That process of failure, because language learning has been important to me in my life, and I'm pretty sure that it's been important to other people around me as well. And it's a bit sad to perceive it sometimes. Is there a moral to the story? I don't think so. Well, if there's any moral, it's don't get too invested in things like this. Or at least don't get invested until you're sure that you've got the aptitude to do them. Once you know that you've got the aptitude to be quite good at languages or the language you're learning, then get invested in it. If that seems like the appropriate way to live your life. But don't get too invested until you know that you have the aptitude, because it can be cruel. It can be a cruel process. Anyway, that's it really. Nothing particularly clever to say. I was just thinking about this guy recently and I thought I would make this video. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, whatever's on your mind, let me know in the comments if you like. I always appreciate that. I am going to head off. Thanks for listening. I appreciate people coming by. And thanks very much. Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye.